do not get to know why or who they end up inspiring. Sometimes those who get inspired are lucky enough to end up facing their heroes. I have been fortunate in meeting up face to face with two of my greatest heroes in the craft of cinema. These two great masters have given me and people like me two films that have taught us the craft of filmmaking, film acting, how to translate philosophy into popular art. Taught many of us to be simple, yet highly passionate, highly edgy, highly modern. They inspired me and many of us to tell our own stories of our time. Two cult films from two masters who were instrumental in altering the course of cinema in their own countries, be it art or be it mainstream. The two films are Taxi Driver, to me, and Arth Satya. The masters are Martin Scorsese and Govind Nihlani. Two films that are very similar in spirit, nature, philosophy, content. They gave us two most contemporary and complex characters of our time. Travis Bickle, Anant Balekar. Two films that gave us two of one of the finest actors of our time and century, Robert De Niro and Om Puri. Two stories of common man and their struggles to keep their honor intact and seek retribution through violence in a violent society. Two men who end up as two true samurais or true knight errant in our modern dark times. Two great, brooding, dark, existential cinema. Two craftsmen who gave us two of the most significant moments of international cinema of today. One, where Travis Bickle looks at the mirror and says, "Are you talking to me?" And the scene.
Really don't know. But before that, I must thank you for a very kind introduction. What Arthatya did was, I wouldn't be able to say exactly what it did. But one thing is certain, that it emphasized the demarcation between two approaches to cinema. One is what we call the mainstream approach, which is designed entirely to entertain. And entertain, in our context, has a certain format, which derives from our traditional narrative forms. Ras Leela, Ram Leela, Tamasha, Natak, Harikatha. So in these forms you integrate everything. You integrate music, recitation, choreography, enactment, and high drama. You enhance the emotions and everything. The other one is understated, tries to be as near the reality as possible. There's a lot of anger and frustration. And more than that, the other form, what we call the parallel cinema form, the basis of that is that it raises questions. And the movement came at a time when, after the freedom of India, partition of India, there was a certain unhappiness, or even say frustration, setting in in the society as to the the promises that they thought will be kept changed the perception or the format of the mainstream cinema. I think it clearly said these are the two kinds of approaches. You have to choose one. The difference between the two approaches became much more marked and much more acute.
But then how do you, I would like to point out to you that the parallel or the films that have questions have very rarely before us have really been able to reach out to a huge audience. Artsatta was one of those films which despite having unknown people just was a huge success. How do you justify that huge success of this film?
I'm looking at it historically. I would say before Artsatta, very few films of that kind were made, and therefore, there was no connection. But here, I must give full, credit to the writer Vijay Tendulkar. The genesis of Artsatta was that after the first film Approach, I was discussing with Mr. Tendulkar what should we do next. And after several meetings, he suggested the Marathi story written by one of his friends, Panvalkar, story. And I found that the story was very good characters. But I told Tendulkar that it's very nice, but it doesn't have the Atma jisko bolte hain na, to sustain the 2-hour film. I thought it was a good but short. So he said, okay, I also feel the same thing, but let us imagine if these characters, the dominating father, the reluctant son who doesn't want to, join the police force, but ultimately he does. And suppose we assume that he does that, what can happen to these people in real life? So let's imagine. So there was a series of brainstorming on this can happen, that can happen. And Tendulkar, as you know, was a journalist as well, and a writer. And he had seen the life on the street level. And from those sessions, he started writing. And one fine morning, came up with a character called Rama Shetty. You see? Now Rama Shetty, one would look at it as a villain character. But by then, the villain in mainstream Hindi cinema had become fairly stereotyped. There was a certain way he will speak, there will be very little complexities in his character, and his job was to oppose the hero and present the greatest danger to the hero, which ultimately hero will speed up and over. But here, because of his acute observations, he brought out a character which immediately could be identified with. Along with it was the anger and frustration in Anant Velankar's character. So these two, identification by the audience and identification with the frustration and anger in the character of the son who is being dominated. And look at the son's graph. He is forced into the force which he doesn't want to do. Then having joined it, he starts feeling a sense of power because of the uniform that he is wearing. And he thinks that he is not invincible, he can do anything. And suddenly realizes that's not true. A simple phone call can humiliate him. And at the end of it, when his friend tells him that if you have the uniform, anything is possible. Without uniform, you are dead. So go and strike a deal with that guy. And
Clear in his thought.
he is ambitious. He has clout. He knows how to manipulate power. And he also knows how to manipulate democratic system. Within that system, a goon can fight an election and acquire the respectability of becoming a councillor in the municipality. That's the election he fights. That's how he starts. Then he will go to state assembly and maybe parliament. We don't know. So it's the kind of graph that he was following, which was very new at that time.
I think I read it somewhere that when Om was first given that poem to read,
Yes.
he actually ended up crying reading that poem, and you wanted that. I don't know. There's a story behind that moment, which I think is one of the most fascinating.
Yeah. You see, because we didn't want a straight statement. So we wanted something evocative, yet something that will reach the audience in simple terms. So the famous poet, Mr. Dilip Ray, he especially wrote those 3 poems, and the last one being Chakravarti. Yeah. Because we didn't want an ordinary words there.
Did you ever approach Amitabh Bachchan to play this role?
For this role?
Yeah?
No. I met him after that. After Jaya ji saw the film,
Somebody told me.
then she
Somebody
arranged
told
a
me
meeting
that.
between me and Amitabh.
Anyway, that would have happened. We wouldn't have got on to it. Om being one of the finest, I think.
Yeah.
As a cinematographer, what has been your connection with Mr. Benegal? Both of you are like 2 big giants, and
Yeah.
what has been your connection? How have you worked together, and in your own way, what has been that connection?
We started actually with ad films. The first thing I did with Mr. Benegal was that he was shooting an ad film, and his cameraman on a particular day couldn't make it because he became unwell. So I was called as a substitute cameraman, and that was the beginning of a very long association. Then I shot some documentaries for him, some more ad films, and then finally Ankur happened.
And did you want to be a director always, or did you move into direction from cinematography? You found your
You see, the course I did from Bangalore was a course in filmmaking, and you could specialize either in exhausting film and also the most satisfying film was Tamas. Yeah. And if I have to say the second one, then that was Dev. It had the same kind of communal tensions background and good character studies.
Why do you say more satisfying?
Huh?
Exhausting, of course, we understand.
Yeah.
We've all seen Tamas, and we can see this huge scale and
Yeah,
what it takes to make a film like that. It's our own godfather of television. But I'm saying that, why do you say it is more satisfactory?
Because when I read the novel, I was fascinated by it. And I visualized it in a particular way. Actually, I wanted to make a film on this. And I couldn't make it because there was no money available for something like this. And then one thing led to another, and it ended up as a mini-series. Thanks to Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, who was the person in charge of Doordarshan, and it got made. But then when I finally saw the film, I thought it went up to about 80% of what I had imagined. And I think that's a huge percentage to be happy about. That's why I thought somehow things fell in place.
But when you thought of it as a film, was it as long as that?
In fact, I was very unhappy that I was thinking of it as a film. Because material was so much over there. And I said, kya nikalenge, kya rakhenge? But I said, I can't do anything else because television at that time was not all that big. But I was and I didn't know what to say. Suddenly my
just digress from the professional to the personal little bit and come back. I grew up with many stories I've been told by my godfather, Minal Sen, about you. And one of the stories I've heard is that I think one of his film was in for National Awards competition, and your film were both competing. And that year, Geeta, Minal Sen's wife, Geeta Di, was working with you in a film somewhere near Calcutta.
Yes.
Directed by, I think it was Arohan or something.
Arohan, you're right. You're right.
And Geeta Di was shooting with you and Shambabu in somewhere near in the suburbs.
Yeah.
You first heard the news that Minal Sen has won the national award. You first came excitedly to Geeta Di and said that Minal, send him a call. He's got the award. And Geeta Di was so embarrassed that you didn't get the award that Geeta Di started crying, and you gave a party to everybody. You called the whole unit together and gave a party for Minal Sen, while Geeta Sen was depressed and crying for you. What is behind this enormous connect of people?
I really don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I must say that I really love Geeta Di. So that's a different thing. And I have a very good relationship with Minal. But at that time, when I heard the award, that I didn't get it was a second thought. But Minal got it. So that's how it happened. I don't know, I can't analyze.
I'm just asking you because